Brathas. 19 books that detailed of the war, and lucky to have made it out alive, especially joining so early, and wrote some of the best poems and books of the war. His name was Louis Brathas. Born July the 14th, 1879 in Havre-Ardenne, he was relatively poor and became a copper like his father, and his mother was a seamstress. He had only went to a few years of school, but the little schooling he got was avid. He became an avid reader with books on his shelf filled with Homer, Goethe, Dante, Hugo, and others. He had also read the Socialist paper and was an active member. By the time World War I broke out, he was married with kids, but he was still called to service into the first few weeks of the war. Due to Brathas' age at the time, though, he was put in the reserves, while the younger men went to the front. But as we know, casualties were high, like in millions before 1915, and he was on the front lines by November 1914, fighting in Artois. In May 1915, he was also sent to Verdun. He fought at the Somme, Champagne, the Argonne, and many more. After Chemin des Dames and the French mutinies in 1907, he trained new recruits and returned home in 1919. His post-war life was peaceful until World War II, but his diaries and poems were edited before he died in 1952. It took another quarter of a century to be published. Polius literally meant the hairy one, a grunt, a common French soldier. Being a pacifist and socialist, he was against the war from the beginning, and it showed in his writing. The endless slaughter and death. He told the horrors of war, just as it was. The day-to-day lives, the day in, the day out. He had also detailed the humanity, with a few like the famous Christmas truce and the days before the trenches were flooded. There was ceasefire, and before the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, where soldiers would just sit in their trench until the war was over. And Merci Polius, destined et un fin plus gloriosin, un dege évident comme l'a dit Victor Hugo, par exemple, écrit bateau, dictophonique, épiaxi, peluche, danse, inougan, des flammes. Merci Polius étant Merci Piot etre donc j'ai été distinct en un fin plus glorieux un dian de Everest, comme l'a dit Victor Hugo par exemple, écrit bateau, des techniques asphyxiated, chauffeur dans une négate d'affirmation. Charles de Gaulle and Louis Brathas. One of his country's leaders for free France, he became a savior of France in its darkest hour and brought France back from the edge of destruction. But he showed skill and leadership. 20 years earlier, France's one, the only, Charles de Gaulle. I mean, he was pretty tall as well, so. Charles André Joseph Marie de Gaulle. De Gaulle was born in the industrial region of Lille, in the Nord department, the third of 5 children. He was raised in a devoutly Catholic and traditional family. His father, Henri de Gaulle, was a professor of history and lecture at the Jewish College, who eventually founded his own school. Henri de Gaulle came from a long line of parliamentarians and genitries from Normandy and Burgundy. De Gaulle's mother, Jenny, née Malot, descendant from a wealthy entrepreneur from Lille. She had French, Irish, Scottish, Flemish, and German ancestry. Also, his family lost a lot of his land during the French Revolution, which they opposed. De Gaulle's father encouraged historical and philosophical debates between his children at mealtimes, and through his encouragements, De Gaulle grew familiar with French history from an early age, struck by his mother's tales, how she cried as a child when she heard of the French capitulations by the Germans at Sedan in 1870. He developed a keen interest in military strategy. He was also influenced by his uncle, who was also called Charles de Gaulle. He was an historian and passionate Celtic, who wrote books and pamphlets advocating the union of the Welsh, Scottish, and Irish and Breton into one people. His grandfather, Julien Philippe, was also an historian, and his grandmother, Josephine Marie, wrote poems which impassioned her Christian faith. World War I. When World War I finally broke out in August 1914, the 33rd Regiment, considered the best fighting unit in France, was immediately thrown into checking the Germans' advance at Dinant. However, the French Fifth Army's commander, General Charles Lanrizac, remained wedded to 19th century battle tactics, throwing his units into pointless bayonet charges with bugles and full colours, flying against the German artillery and incurring heavy losses. As the platoon commander, de Gaulle was involved in fierce fighting from the outset. He received his baptism of fire on August the 15th. He was among the first to be wounded, receiving a bullet to the knee in the Battle of Dinant. It is sometimes claimed that in hospital he grew bitter at the tactics news and spoke out with other injured officers against outdated methods in the French army. However, there were no contemporary evidence that he understood the importance of artillery firepower in modern war. Instead, in his writing at the time, considered to be over rapid offensive by inadequate French generals and the slowness of the English troops. He rejoined his regiment in October as the commander of the 7th Company. Many of his former comrades were already dead. In December, he became a regimental adjutant. De Gaulle's unit gained recognition for repeatedly crawling out into no man's land to listen to the conversations of the enemy in their trenches, and the information he brought back was so valuable that the 18th of January 1915 he received a Croix de Guerre. On the 10th of February he was promoted to captain. Initially on probation, on March the 10th, 1915, de Gaulle received a bullet in the left hand, which internally seemed trivial but became infected. The wound incapacitated him for 4 months and later forced him to wear his wedding ring on the right hand. In August, he commanded the 10th Company before returning to duty as the regimental. On the 3rd of September 1915, his rank of captain became permanent. In late October, returning from leave, he returned to command the 10th Company again, as the company's commander at Dormont during the Battle of Verdun. The 2nd of March 1916, while leading the charge to try and break out of the position which had become surrounded by the enemy, he received a bayonet wound to the left thigh after being stunned by a shell and was captured after passing out from the effects of poison gas. He was the one of few survivors of his battalion. He spent 32 months in a German prisoner of war camp, where his treatment was satisfactory. In captivity, de Gaulle read German newspapers. He learned German at school and spent summer vacations in Germany. Also, his mother is German heritage, so that's why he could understand the German conversations in the trenches before he was captured. And he gave talks to his views on the course of the conflict to fellow prisoners. His patriotic fervor and confidence in victory earned him yet another nickname, L'Incorruptible, the Constable, the title of the medieval commander-in-chief of the French army. During his time as a POW, de Gaulle actually got to meet Mikhail Tonohovsky, the future commander of the Red Army, and whose theories about fast-moving mechanized armies slowly resembled his in the future of Stalingrad and other such Chernovsky's offensives. While a prisoner of war, de Gaulle wrote his first book, Discords Elementaires, An Enemy House Divided, analyzing the issues and divisions within the German forces. The book was published in 1924 actually. Long periods of solitary confinement and was the withdrawal of privileges such as newspapers and tobacco. In his later letters to his parents, he consistently spoke of his frustration that the war was continuing without him, calling the situation a shameful misfortune and compared it to being cuckolded. Okay? As the war neared its end, he grew depressed. He was playing no part in victory, but despite his efforts, he remained in captivity until the armistice. On December the 1st, 1918, 3 weeks later, he returned to his father's house in Dorgreen and was reunited with his three brothers, who had all served in the army and survived the war. Son mari se croyant vaincu